Welcome to the forest moon of Endor. Now, back on planet Earth, it is the 4th of July. A lot of people on Earth, particularly Americans who have been miseducated, don't know what the 4th of July stands for. It's the anniversary of the passage of the Declaration of Independence, articles of treason against the British Crown. Basically, the American people, or 1/3 of the American people, the same amount that currently support Donald Trump as a percentage, decided that they could no longer take representation, taxation without representation, legislation without representation. Basically, the King of England would not give them seats in Parliament. 13 seats in Parliament, one for each county, or one for each colony, could have prevented the American Revolution. But the king did not want to give the American people a voice in the House of Commons. Therefore, we had to go through a separation. We had to separate themselves. So we wrote what was called the Declaration of Independence. I'll quote the first part of it for you. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To ensure these rights, governments are institutionalized among men and derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. What they're saying there is, we would consent to a government that would listen to us, that would allow us to write our own laws. And if the King of England or any leader would allow us to participate in our own laws, we would agree with them. But since we're not allowed to participate, we don't consent, and we are sending you a notice that we are parting ways, which was the Declaration of Independence, which is also an act of treason and an act of war. We're telling them, listen, we're not playing anymore. Think about filing divorce with somebody and then having to fight your way out of the house. Here's your divorce papers. I'm taking my stuff and I'm leaving. Let's go. That's exactly what happened. England could have let the colonies go peaceably. They chose not to. There was an 8-year war. Tens of thousands of people died. The people who signed the Declaration of Independence signed an act of treason with their own name. The ones that were caught, and several of them were hung. If they couldn't catch them, they caught their families. It was an act of treason, punishable by death. They all knew it, and they all signed it. Some of them got caught, some of them paid the ultimate price. Everyone who signed the Declaration of Independence spent the next 8 years living in fear. And they actually spent the rest of their lives living in fear, because had the British, even after we'd won the war, gotten their hands on them, it was still an act of treason, punishable by hanging, drawing, and quartering. Think of what happened to Mel Gibson at the end of Braveheart. That was the penalty for signing the Declaration of Independence. And they all did it. This is the day everybody gets drunk, eats hot dogs, bratwurst, but think about the men, the families, their wives, their kids, who signed an article of treason, put their name on it, sent it to the king, and said, we're done. We're willing to fight to our death to be free. That's what we really celebrate. And think about the names of the men and their families. Their wives didn't have to go along, but most of them did. In addition, if the British caught their wives or their kids, they held them hostage or killed them. And if they caught the men who signed it, they killed them immediately, hung them, or drawn and quartered them. That is a hell of a price to pay for your freedom. You should be grateful to the men and their families who signed that document hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I'm Tim with Tim's TV. Happy 4th of July, and thank you to the men and the families of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence that gave us our freedom. Also, to the King of England, cheerio, mate. Had you given us 13 seats in common, we might not have had a fight. Cheers.